Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Tuesday, November 16th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Michigan State game is in 4 days. The game against Michigan in 11 days. There's been a lot of talk about stuff surrounding the Ohio State football program over the last few days. We've been talking a lot about the Purdue game. We'll be looking ahead to the Michigan State game for pretty much the rest of the week. But we do need to take one day to stop and talk a little recruiting, because there was some very big recruiting news this weekend. Sonny Styles, a five-star defensive prospect in 2023, committed to the Buckeyes over the weekend. He is the son of former Ohio State linebacker Lorenzo Styles. Buckeye Scoop's Marc Givler has been all over this recruitment for literally years now. He's here this morning to discuss what it means for Ohio State. Marc, thanks for joining me.
Hey, good to be here. Big get for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, no kidding. And I remember talking to you about Sonny Styles while we were driving to the Penn State game last year, 2020, when the world is all blowing up and there's no one at the games. We were sitting in the car, there's 6 hours, and we kind of were just talking about all sorts of different recruits. And I remember you were very, very confident that he would end up at Ohio State. And if this is a point when everyone else was kind of going, oh, I don't know, it could be, maybe, who knows? And you were like pretty adamant that, even though his older brother Lorenzo Jr. was already, he was going to Notre Dame and he is there now, you were pretty confident he was going to Ohio State. And you never really wavered on that after that point either. So what was it that made you so sure that Sonny Styles was going to end up as a Buckeye?
Well, I've known the family for a while. Obviously covered Lorenzo Jr. since he was a freshman at Pickerington Central. So, 5 or 6 year history there. I can't give away the source, but it wasn't a history teacher at Pickerington Central, wasn't a guidance counselor, it was a little more closer to the situation than that. But same source who said, watch out for Notre Dame with Lorenzo Jr. and that, Lorenzo Jr. might be more of a Notre Dame kid in terms of fit, was adamant that Sonny would go a different direction. That Sonny was more of the big Buckeye fan growing up, was kind of more into maybe I want to say it's Notre Dame and Ohio State is kind of different culturally. And Notre Dame's a private school, a small, quiet campus. Ohio State's a kind of like the almost the New York City of college sports, with how big it is and how overwhelming it can be. And that Sonny was just kind of more drawn toward the spotlight of the big city like Columbus, maybe than Lorenzo was, and just very different personalities. They're very close. Obviously, they're brothers, but they are very close. But and the other thing I found interesting was if anyone notices when they look back, how did Sonny first get in touch with Ohio State? Well, Lorenzo Jr. called Al Washington and got Al Washington on the phone with Sonny while Lorenzo Jr. was committed to Notre Dame. So obviously, while they are very close, and I'm sure Lorenzo would have liked Sonny to go to Notre Dame and play with him, that was a clear indication of kind of where Sonny was leaning early, and just, then Ohio State did a great job recruiting him. So I think he was drawn to the idea of kind of being a positionless defensive player instead of the next so-and-so at, whatever other school.
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to talk about the position thing in a second, but it is interesting. This is not the first time that Ohio State and Notre Dame have split brothers. Like Liam Eichenberg went to Notre Dame, Tommy Eichenberg is going to Ohio State. So this is not completely unprecedented. It is interesting. You always would think, oh, you're going to want to go play with your brother. Some guys are going to go out and want to strike out and kind of make their own name for themselves. So that sounds like that is sort of what's happening here. You mentioned kind of a positionless thing, and that's really interesting to me, like where he fits on this defense. Because, there are certain rules in recruiting, and you don't comp a high school offensive lineman to Orlando Pace, for example. But I saw Bill Green, who is normally a pretty reserved and responsible scouter of players and analyst. He threw an Isaiah Simmons comp on Sonny Styles, which is like, that is pretty high praise for a, safety / linebacker kind of player, that you could have that kind of Isaiah Simmons impact on defense at the college level. Is that something you'd agree with? Where do you really see Sonny Styles playing at the college level?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think it's interesting because I think Sonny can play at all three levels of the defense. So I think Isaiah Simmons is probably the closest thing we can kind of draw from in terms of recent history. There aren't many guys that really would fit for me from a comparison standpoint, because I've watched Sonny play a deep free safety role. I've watched him play kind of a strong safety role. I know he can be a linebacker. I think he could be a Von Miller. I think he could be a stand-up edge rusher. They even worked him out at camp at Ohio State over the summer with Larry Johnson, working on some stand-up pass rushing moves. So in that sense, yeah, I think he can do just about anything on the football field. And Isaiah Simmons was very similar to that. I don't know that he's going to play a lot of safety. I think he's probably going to be a linebacker, and maybe even kind of a, they used to have that viper position that they coined there for a year or two with Tyquan Lewis and some of those guys. But I could see him being just, again, a guy who stands up and rushes the passer a little bit as well. So he's unique. I think, Jack Sawyer is probably the most dominant guy I think I've seen in Ohio the last maybe 8 to 10 years as a defensive guy. But we all knew what Jack was going to be. I think Sonny is maybe the most unique guy I've seen, because, again, I think he could he play a bullet strong safety? Sure. Could he play inside linebacker? Sure. Could he play outside linebacker? Sure. Could he play, again, stand-up edge rusher? It's fascinating, all the things he can do on the football field. And that's just the type of athlete he is. He does the same thing on the basketball floor for his basketball team. He jumps center for the basketball team. He plays above the rim. He can guard the perimeter on the basketball. I mean, it's unbelievable the different things he can do.
Yeah, you wonder if he does end up as a linebacker, do they start having him, asking him to do some of the stuff that Pete Werner used to do, where, every once in a while Pete Werner would drop back and be the deep safety just to do something unpredictable, and, the other safeties are doing something else, but hey, there's still a guy playing safety, guy playing center field, and it's Pete Werner. He can do that, kind of give them that kind of flexibility as well. He's also he's an in-state 5-star prospect who's, obviously going to be at a lot of games and events. I've seen him at a whole bunch, multiple games, multiple times at camp last year. I mean, he's been to Ohio State a whole bunch just in the last, 4 or 5 months, and will presumably be there quite a bit moving forward. He's also someone who, when you were that kind of like top 10 player nationally, someone who other players are going to want to play with. So I guess the immediate question would be, can he be the 2023 version of CJ Hicks, where sort of the Pied Piper type recruiter to help bring other guys into the Ohio State class?
Yeah, I think he can be. It's going to be a little different than CJ. I think they're a little bit different personality wise, but I think they'll get about the same results. CJ's very vocal, very outspoken, very high energy. Sonny's a little more reserved, a little more laid back, but he also is a major leader on the teams. And when he talks, people listen. And I know he's definitely interested in kind of helping recruit. I know he's tight with a lot of these guys. Luke Montgomery. He's got to know AJ Harris a little bit. I'm sure he's going to start working on Richard Young if he hasn't already. So it's one of those things where I don't know that he's going to go about it maybe the same way that CJ does. CJ's kind of, maybe, I don't want to call him a high pressure sales pitch, but CJ's pretty in your face with it. I think Sonny's going to be a little more relaxed about it, but I think he's going to be one of the leaders of this class. And, I think it's interesting because I think AJ Harris is kind of the personality that CJ Hicks is. I think they have very, very similar big personalities. And if Ohio State's able to get AJ Harris in the fold and you pair AJ Harris with Sonny, that's going to be a ridiculous tandem as far as recruiting other players goes.
So Styles is in the 2023 class. Before he gets to campus, though, there is a whole nother class to go. They will at least start signing 1 month from yesterday. 1 month from Monday is when the early signing day for the class of 2022 is, December 15th. So let's talk about the rest of that 2022 class, because they've got 16 players committed right now. Obviously, they're not signing a class of 16. You've got more spots than that. So how many more guys are they going to take? And I'm not going to necessarily buttonhole you on specific guys, but give me kind of like a breakdown of like position groups that, maybe, the 7 or 8 or whatever the number is. How do you expect the remaining commitments in that 2022 class to break down in terms of position groups?
Yeah, I mean, as always, there's going to be some fluidity there. I think, looking at the final number, I think it could be about 23. I think it could stretch to 25 if things fall the right way. So I guess, we can kind of start with the sure things. They're going to add a few more defensive linemen. They're going to add, I think they want to finish with at least 4 defensive linemen, maybe 5. I could see this going to 5. I think it's going to be probably a breakdown, something along the lines of, at least 2 defensive ends. I think they'd like to get 2 defensive tackles. And if they can get a 5th guy who's maybe not even a hybrid, but just kind of a best available defensive lineman, which at this point looks like it'll be an end. So I think they're going to land a few more defensive linemen. I think they'd like to add another linebacker. There aren't a ton of guys on that board right now. I think Jimmy Rolder out of the Chicago area is probably their top target right now and most realistic target right now. So they're going to try to add a linebacker. Look, the secondary, could they stand pat with what they have? They could. Could they add one more? Yes, but they'd like to add 2, and they would like those 2 to be Zion Branch and Xavier Wampa. So whatever number of those 2 they can get, I think they can get both of them. I'm a little more optimistic about that than I was maybe a few months ago when it didn't feel to me like they would both go to Ohio State. Now I'm starting to feel like that might be possible. So they'd like to get those 2. So, again, that could be probably 1 or 2 and more in the secondary. And then, it gets a little interesting on offense. They're done at running back. They're done at receiver. They're done at tight end. But, they would take a quarterback, I think, if they could find the right fit. Drew Aller seems very locked in with Penn State right now. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere. They are bringing in Devin Brown. That looking like an official visit there at some point. So maybe if something could happen there, USC commit, maybe. I personally don't think they're going to be able to find one. I don't know that it's going to work out with Devin Brown, but they're going to look. And then you've got the offensive line where there's still room, I think, for probably 2 more. So, you do the math on that. Quick math in my head is, if they could get a quarterback, that they would take one. If they could get 2 offensive linemen, they would take 2 offensive linemen, but at least 3 defensive linemen here. And so now you're getting into 7 to 9. And I think that puts us right there on the 23 to 25 range I just talked about. So that's kind of where things are at right now. We can go down the high conviction picks if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Give me who you think, gun to your head. If, of those 7 to 9, who are the ones that you are most certain end up in that final class?
Yeah, I'll throw out a few. I mean, the first one is Caden Curry. I've had him as, part of this class, for a long time now, probably since last year. I still think that's going to happen for them in the next few weeks. Outstanding defensive lineman. I think, again, I think they're going to at worst split those 2 safety prospects, Branch and Wampa. Right now, I think I'm probably a little more confident about Branch. I think they're going to get Branch. And, but I think they could get Wampa too, but I think Branch is probably a little bit higher conviction. I still, I'm starting to feel pretty good. Again, I got a little dicey there for a while. I still think they're probably the favorite for Amari Abor, big time defensive end out of Texas. So those are some guys that, I'm feeling pretty good about. Jimmy Rolder's an interesting one. Again, we just talked about him, the linebacker out of Chicago who had no offers a few weeks ago and now has 80 offers. So that's been fun to kind of watch him blow up. I think Ohio State's certainly in there. He's got a lot of ties to Illinois, which is going to be interesting to see how much that factors in. But those are some of my higher conviction. And then I guess I should mention Hero Kanu. I still have Hero Kanu, big time defensive tackle. I still think he's going to end up at Ohio State, but I know Georgia and Oklahoma are obviously making that interesting right now.
Well, between that, I mean, you're looking at potentially adding 7 to 9 commitments in the next month or so. And also, hey, they're also still playing football on the field, and there's some games of some consequence coming up. Boy, would this be a great time to be subscribed to all of the great Buckeye Scoop podcasts and subscribe to our YouTube channel and on our site, because there's going to be a whole lot of news in the next month. It's all wherever you are, just search Buckeye Scoop. So youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop on whatever podcast platform you want, search Buckeye Scoop, or just go to buckeyescoop.com. Tons of great content from our fantastic team of insiders, recruiting, games, X's and O's stuff. I've already seen Ross Fulton's first piece for this week on the X's and O's stuff. It is dynamite as always. We'll have Ross on a little later on in the week to talk about that, but lots of great stuff, lots of stuff to talk about. It is this is the high holy days of the Ohio State football calendar, with the Michigan game coming up and the Big Ten championship game and college football playoff and all that great stuff. We will also have our live college football playoff reaction show. Turner Gooderman, Kevin Noon, and I will be on YouTube, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop at 7:00 on Tuesday night, watching the committee do its work and release their rankings, and kind of giving you our thoughts on where they're wrong, why they're crazy, why they're dumb, and also, some of the other stuff that you probably want to hear about. You guys generally want to hear negative stuff about the committee, so there's always good negative stuff to talk about with the committee. But we'll have kind of the what does this mean for Ohio State perspective on where things stand when the committee releases its latest rankings, heading into what should be a fun week of Michigan State game. Lots of stuff to talk about there as well. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.